It's one of the most passionate rivalries in all of college football, and it's going down Saturday afternoon in Jacksonville. The top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs clashing with the Florida Gators. The two schools have gone head-to-head in Jacksonville since 1933, and it's always intense. There was Steve Spurrier and the Heisman curse. Run, Lindsey, run.
45-40, run, Lindsey.
Then Herschel Walker went over the top next year. The Gator stomp. And Urban Meyer getting his revenge the following year, even burning all his timeouts in the final minute. As far as this year goes, the Dogs, led by their ferocious defense, are locked in on trying to win their first national title since 1980. But head coach Kirby Smart knows they can't overlook a talented Florida team.
This game's not about rankings, never been about rankings. It's a rival game. Our kids understand that it's not about records.
As for the Florida Gators, it's been a disappointing year thus far, sitting at 4-3, but they love nothing more than to ruin Georgia's perfect season.
It's the second time we're going to play the number one team in the same season. That doesn't happen very often. That's why our guys, they'll get juice for this.
It's the Dogs and the Gators in the SEC Game of the Week. Will Georgia continue to dominate on both sides of the ball, or can Florida pull off the massive upset? We're in for a good one Saturday on CBS.
And we now welcome in SEC on CBS Sideline reporter Jamie Erdahl to break down this matchup. Jamie, Georgia, #1 in the AP poll and has been for a few weeks now. They're the favorites to win the national title, but just how good is this Bulldogs team in your opinion?
Dangerously good. To the point where this team, the snowball effect they had coming in from their 2020 season and what they deemed as a disappointing finish to that year. So many talented guys returned, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to create this monster of a defensive unit that nobody wants to face week in and week out. Such an interesting juxtaposition between these two teams in Florida and Georgia heading into Saturday's game that you hit the open week for both of them before this classic rivalry game. Georgia is flying high. They are playing some of their best football, especially on defense. And Florida, just the opposite story. The break in the season tells such a different tale than when it started for both of these teams. But Georgia, I wouldn't be surprised if we once again find them playing in that first weekend in December, and all of a sudden we start to have that conversation about how many SEC teams do get into the college football playoff. And Georgia, week in and week out, has been proving why they deserve to be that #1 conversation.
Well, as you know, things aren't going quite as smoothly in Gainesville, Florida. 4-3, they've fallen out of the top 25 after losing to LSU in their last game on October 16th. What's Florida's mindset as they get ready to face the top team in the nation?
There is palpable disappointment, I think, amongst the players. But as you said, how do you look ahead and create a season that is still something to hang your hat on? The expectation was great for this Florida team coming into this season. But really the issue that I've learned from players has been that their 8 plays was the number that I kept hearing over this season has determined this 4-3 record. This team hasn't been able to close games. Florida is 0-6 in their last 6 games where that game has been decided in single digits. So that tells you that when Florida's right there at the edge of a game, they just don't have the confidence to find that game-winning play. I think a lot of that comes from where is their star power? Who is the guy, who's the true point guard of this team, whether it be on defense or on offense? And I just don't see that in the identity in Florida. And it takes a while to figure out who that guy is. And Florida just hasn't gotten there. So, do they play the rest of the season just trying to play upset ball and starting with Georgia? I'm sure that would be a fun way to close out the season, but Florida's just, not where they wanted to be at this juncture.
Well, Jamie, there's no short of a talent in this one. What's the top matchup you'll be watching for on Saturday in Jacksonville?
I had a great time this week getting to know Jordan Davis a little bit better, the nose tackle for Georgia. What a charismatic young man. Almost matching the size of his personality is just the sheer size of himself on defense. He is massive. He takes up, I think Dan Mullen just finished telling us in a meeting that this guy can shoot A gap, B gap, C gap. He can take up multiple gaps when he's trying to get to a quarterback on his way to the football. He can chase anybody down. He's not just a big guy who can't move. He's got speed and athleticism. So for me, it's Jordan Davis against the world. Alabama, you have got to imagine, is putting on game tape every week to see how teams are dealing with containing Jordan Davis and how they can negate him in terms of him being on that Georgia defensive line. And it will be a very interesting, Nick Saban craft study if those two teams end up being in the SEC championship, what he does with Jordan Davis, because this guy is phenomenal and he's somebody to keep your eye on.
She is Jamie Erdahl breaking down the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I'm sure you won't partake down there in Jacksonville.
It's all work. All work in Jacksonville.
I love it. Be sure to catch Jamie along with Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on The Call Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. We'll have pregame, halftime, and postgame coverage right here on CBS Sports HQ.